All right, well, welcome Market Scholars. I'm your host Brandon Van Zee, and this is your Sector Selector tutorial. The intention of this particular video today is just to give you a bit more understanding about that tool that I've developed specifically for my top-down trend trading class. And that way you guys can kind of have a video that will describe some of the elements of that particular tool, and that way we don't have to take up quite as much time every single week in class kind of describing the ins and outs of it. So with that, a quick reminder that of course everything that we discuss at Market Scholars is for educational purposes only. When you see the various symbols on that sector selector tool, remember that is not a recommendation from us to you. We don't offer those. We of course are an education company only. So if you need your own financial guidance or advice, you'd have to do that elsewhere. But we do hope that our tools and our teachings and things like that can be effective for you as you develop your own understanding of the markets going forward. So remember, in the end, every decision that you make as an investor is yours and yours alone. So with that, let's go ahead and come on over here to the internet, where I do have the Market Scholars website pulled up. As you can see, it's just www.marketscholars.com. And here in late July of 2018, when I'm recording this video, of course, you might be watching this video at a different time, depending on when you've discovered us. But anyway, this is what our website looks like at this current time. And of course, since we are a new company, there's a decent chance that our website could look slightly different by the time you happen to be watching it. But right now, this should give you at least a strong feel for where to navigate to. So once I'm on this website, first things first, if you wanted to discover where that particular tool is, that sector selector tool, right now I've been placing it on the blog area of our website. So notice that when you hover over all these different menu items up at the top of our website, many of them have submenus. But remember, like in the case of forums, there's classes, there's market outlook, but you can actually click on the word forums, and there will be additional forums even beyond those two. That's something that we might look into changing the wording around that a little bit later. But right now, just wanted to point that out since I was kind of going back and forth with somebody on an email about that this weekend, so it's fresh in my mind. But where I want you to go to look for this sector selector is actually going to be in the blog area. So I'm just going to click on the word blog up here at the top of our website. Now keep in mind, I generally do send out emails to you guys as well if you are a premium member. Remember that this information, the full sector selector, is made exclusively for our premium members, and I don't distribute that full graphic to the public. What I generally do is I let the public see the top half of the sector selector, but then you guys are the ones that are privy to the bottom half of the sector selector. Now once per month or so I might also share the bottom half just to kind of get the word out as far as what it is, but anyway, that would be more on the marketing side of things for you guys, and the benefit you have of being premium scholars here is that you're going to have access to it each and every week. So anyway, I generally send out an email to our members in addition to posting it on the blog. So I'm mentioning that because many of you kind of rely upon your email, and that's great, and I want to be helpful and send out information when I can. But remember, if there's ever a week where you don't get the email, I don't want you to panic at that moment. I want you to also be able to see on our website how you can specifically navigate to find that information without the email. Because remember, sometimes emails get lost, or sometimes emails get sent to a junk folder. So if you don't know how to navigate on our website to the area, then you might be kind of feeling a little bit out of sorts there to a degree. So anyway, that's kind of the purpose of me showing you this now, in addition to what I generally am sending you via email. Now, as a reminder, I'm the only one that does create this sector selector. David does not do it. It takes several hours. I hope to refine that process as time goes on, but right now it's taking me most of the entire day of Friday to put together. It will get faster, I have no doubt about that, but the point that I'm trying to make is it's a tremendous undertaking to put together all the statistics and data necessary for the graphics. And so if I'm ever on vacation, then just be aware that there will not be a sector selector for that particular week. So I'll try to do my best to kind of inform you guys ahead of time when I'm going to be on vacation. But if there's ever a weekend where you don't get the email and then you also go here to the blog and you can't find it there, then there's a pretty decent chance that's probably a weekend where I'm on vacation. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there as well. But as you can see, once I've clicked on the blog, the sector selector shows up right there. I've been posting this late on Friday nights after I've been getting done. Some of you might not be seeing it until Saturday mornings, but I'm recording this right now on Monday, and so that's why we see it right up here at the top. Remember, our blog, you can start scrolling down and seeing all these other things that we post in our blog as well, but in this particular case, the sector selector is right up there at the top. I'm mentioning this just in case you happen to be looking for it on a day that is not over the weekend and you're thinking, boy, I thought it was going to be up at the top. You might have to scroll down a bit in order to find that. While we're here, I might also point out that there's this area off to the right-hand side here that I'd encourage you to take a look at when you get a moment. It's called Categories, and if you click that drop-down, you can go into the different categories of the blogs that are posted out there as well. That can be particularly helpful if you're looking for an old class recording from, let's say, over a week ago. Sometimes it's hard to find that because the blogs kind of pile upon themselves pretty quickly in this overall area right here. So one way to cut to the chase and go directly to an old recording would be to click on the recordings category as just one example right here. And oftentimes you can see what category our blogs are listed in by looking kind of under the blog itself. Like in this case, you can see it says posted by Brandon Van Zee, top-down trend trading. And so you can see that the category that happens to belong in is top-down trend trading right here. So that would be another thing you could do if you wanted to see previous versions of the sector selector as well. So let's kind of experiment with that for just a second. I'm going to now, after I've clicked the drop-down for categories there, I'm actually going to click on top-down trend trading. And so you can kind of see it spinning up here in my tab in the upper left, telling me it's working. And now you can see the sector selectors going back from previous weeks as well. So that'll be another good tip for you that will allow you to go back and look at previous versions of this tool as well. And of course, you can bookmark this within your internet browser. I'm not going to show you how to do that here because everybody's internet browser is different, whether you use Firefox or Chrome or Internet Explorer or what have you. But remember that you can bookmark these different things within your own internet browser if you kind of feel like it's harder for you to find where you came from and navigate our website. So anyway, wanted to show you that. So as you can see, the titles are very much the same. Sector selector for July 13th, sector selector for July 20th, and then this most recent one is sector selector for July 27th. So let's go ahead and click on that. And that will take us to the kind of the full view of the graphic where I can start explaining things a bit better. So this first image up here, don't worry about that. That's just kind of the cover image for the blog itself. But as we start scrolling down a bit more, then that's when we're going to actually see the tool down below here. So just a quick heads up. Feel free to read through this on your own up here, as always, to get a better feel for it. But the main thing that I want to point out is that if you want to see this information in greater detail down below here, make sure you click on the images. I know for most of you, you're probably looking at that and saying, boy, I can't make anything out of that. And I totally understand. When I'm taking screenshots of this, by the way, it's my entire monitor. So this data has to be kind of compressed into such a way where it takes up the entire screen. So when I take a screenshot of it and post it somewhere, it might look like it's all scrunched up together. So if you just click on the image, it'll expand it to your full monitor. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And I should say as well, it's probably best to be viewed on a desktop computer. Now, some of you might be, looking at this on a smartphone. I've done it myself, and you can use kind of the pinch function on your smartphone to kind of expand in detail a little bit greater, but it's not the greatest of experience. I think you will find that it's better if you can take a couple of minutes out of your day to look at it on your normal desktop computer. You'll have a better viewing experience from that perspective. All right, so as I mentioned up here, this graphic is made specifically for my top-down trend trading class that I currently teach on Mondays at noon Eastern time. But certainly there's other folks that might have an interest in using it as well. So I don't want to make it seem like the only people that can use this are those that attend my Monday class. But I mention that because, you know, sometimes people give me suggestions of things that I should have done differently, and I have to remind them, well, the reason I am doing it is specifically for that Monday class. You're welcome to use it if you're not attending that class, but remember that the reason that I created the tool in the first place was for that Monday class. So it may not be perfect for everybody's situation, but it has done a reasonable job for us in our Monday top-down trend trading class. So the kind of the idea behind the tool, and I've developed a tool like this for many years, and the idea is to look at the stocks that have been hitting new 52-week highs to kind of give us an understanding of what stocks the market prefers right now. And then everything else was kind of developed on top of that concept. So let's start that process of kind of explaining that as well. So down below here, you will notice that there are, again, two different graphics. Now, this top graphic is kind of known as a high-level overview, and then this second bottom graphic down here will be known as kind of the detailed area where we're kind of selecting our stock tickers from. So as I mentioned before, this top area is something that I do share for free on Twitter, just to kind of generate some buzz about it and different things like that, you know, make people aware of it. As a business owner, I have to kind of think in terms of that way in order to get other people interested in our services. And so as a reminder, I do have my Twitter account pulled up here. If you're not following me yet, make sure you're doing so. Remember, some of you might have been following me at my old work Twitter handle. So just verify that when you go to @BrandonVanZ, that it says following off to the right-hand side here somewhere. I can't show you that because I'm actually Brandon VanZ, obviously. So I can't show you what that looks like from your view, but it'll say following over here if you are following me already. If you're not following me, make sure you click the follow button, and then that will allow you to follow me going forward. But as you can see, like this last weekend when I got the sector selector done, I did pin it to the top of my Twitter profile. I do that to make it nice and easy for you guys to locate. Twitter allows a user to pin one tweet to the top of their timeline, and that way you don't have to start scrolling through chronologically to go back and look for the various tweets that you're looking for. So in that case, I'm just trying to be helpful by pinning it to the top of my timeline over the weekend. Now, I might have other things pinned to the top of my timeline throughout the week, like our market outlook videos or different things like that. But over the weekend, from basically when I produce that sector selector until the time we teach my Monday morning top-down trend trading class, that'll be pinned up at the top there for you for easy access. Now, that's important to understand, because again, I offer that perk. If we're ever able to get to 100 retweets, which you can see we've done here this weekend, because 110 of you have retweeted it already, then I do let you guys know as a perk what 3 stocks we're going to be covering in class later that day. And that way you guys can you know, think about trading them in your own paper money accounts and get your homework done and be prepared for coming into class and things like that. So anyway, when you see this on Twitter, notice that it does not show that bottom half of the graphic. It's only showing the top half, which again, I do make available for free for people out there. So in order to retweet it, I'll show you. It's very, very simple. If you're on the desktop like I am right now, remember your cell phone experience or your smartphone experience might be a little bit different, but on a desktop, it's as simple as this. Click on that button right below the tweet that basically looks like an icon of 2 arrows chasing each other around, and notice how they're gray right now. So you know, that tells me that I have not yet, as a user, retweeted this graphic. If those icons are gray down there, that means that you have not engaged with that particular tweet yet. So in order to do that, if I'm emulating your experience as a user, I'll show you how it's done. First of all, let's do the like first. The like is currently at exactly 100 likes right now. So if I click on that, that one's really easy. Notice that it went from 100 to 101, and now it's no longer gray, it's nice and red heart, and that number, of course, increased. So that tells me that Twitter accepted it. Well, the likes are great, but what I'm actually doing for that perk is specifically for the retweet. You can certainly do both, but just to be clear, it's the retweets that I need to get up and over 100 for that perk. So in order to do the retweet properly, because there are still a lot of folks that do what's known as a quote retweet, and unfortunately that does not get counted, but you know, that's Twitter. That's not me saying I'm not counting it. It's just that Twitter does not include it in that number when you do a quote retweet. So let me show you the proper way to do a regular retweet, which is I'm just going to click on this once. Now notice it's asking me, do you want to add a comment? And again, on your cell phone, it might look a little different than this, but it's still the same thing. There's going to be an area where if you want to add your own words, you can. Do not do that. Again, if you do that, unfortunately, it does not add that number, and I will not know necessarily that you have done that. So if you want it to be counted for the official perk, do not add your own words. If you want to click reply afterwards, down here there's kind of this little blurb icon, bubble icon, however you want to describe that, that is the reply on a tweet. That you can do, and it won't affect things. But if you added words at this point, or a comment, Twitter considers that a quote retweet, not a regular retweet, and it does not get counted in the official number. So when it's asking you to add a comment, just simply do not put anything in there. And the next step is just click retweet right here like that. And now notice that that number is no longer 110, it moved up to 111. That way I know that Twitter accepted my retweet. And of course, it's no longer gray, it's green in this case. And so again, I know that it has been accepted. Now, you can also, if you really wanted to verify and double check if it accepted yours, you can also kind of click off to the left-hand side here in this empty area. And you can actually see the people, at least the most recent people that are doing the retweets. Now I can come in here and first of all I can see my name right there, so I know right off the bat in my picture that it accepted it. But if I wanted to see it specifically, I can actually click on the retweets right there and it'll show me the people who most recently retweeted. So there's myself right there because I was the most recent one, but then there's Paul and Ram and Rich and Jim and Kenneth and Pat and Judy and so on and so on. So anyway, wanted to show that because again, I know sometimes that some of you might be newer to Twitter and you're not familiar with that functionality. So that's your retweeting process. And again, if I get 100 retweets each weekend prior to Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, then I will release the 3 stocks ahead of time for those of you that want access to that perk. So make sure you get in the habit of, on the weekends, going in there and doing the retweets. All right. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the sector selector specifically and some of the functionality and elements of it so that way you're a bit more familiar with it. So the ranking system up here, based on the different sectors that exist out there, is basically a ranking system that is utilizing the Market Scholar's 1000 watch list. That is hyperlinked up here, as you can see as well. So I generally try to include that on each week's sector selector tool announcement. That way it's easy for you guys to access. So if you come up here to where it says Market Scholars 1000 in the paragraph, right click on it and go to open link in new tab. Then up here at the top where you have your tab-based browsing, you can see that it's opening up here. And so now that it's open, I'm going to click on that tab and you can see this is that watch list of the 1,000 stocks that make that up. So this tutorial does not cover that. I already posted a different tutorial for that called the watch list tutorial that's embedded on that link, but I'm merely pointing that out here because I want you guys to know how I'm constructing the data that is ultimately ranking these various sectors out there. And I'm specifically using an equal weighted thought process across those 1,000 ticker symbols that make up the various sectors that are out there. So it's an important distinction because some of you might assume that I'm using a sector-based ETF in order to do my rankings, and I am not. I'm actually going into all of the 1,000 ticker symbols of that Market Scholars 1000 watch list and basically utilizing the data from each one of those 1,000 ticker symbols and then kind of backing that out and constructing it from a sector perspective to see where the strength is. So Let me quickly click on this bottom graphic, and then we'll go back to the top, because I just want to show you on the bottom graphic, you can actually see the various things that I'm ranking these various sectors by. So remember, I'm not just including one and only one row here that shows the total. I'm showing you the 10 different ways that the total ranking is developed above that. That's an important understanding, because some of you may not like the way that I put together the 10 different rankings, individual rankings. You know, as somebody that's in my position, I always have somebody in my ear telling me I should do something differently, as you guys can imagine. Trying to deal with everybody and doing my best to balance the situation as best I can, but there's always going to be somebody out there that doesn't like the way that I go about my process. So the reason that I leave all 10 of these listed up here, and remember, this is chewing up extra space that I don't necessarily have, but I think it's important because some of you might not like that I look at all 10 of these different ranking systems for each one of the sectors out there. So theoretically, if you don't like all of them, let's say you only liked one of them or you only like two of them, well, it allows you to pick that out if you wanted to. Let's say that you were only interested in the 3-month price percentage. Well, in this case, you can see that healthcare would be number 1 on a 3-month price perspective, but utilities is only 7th. Now, notice directly below it, utilities is actually number 1 on a 6-month price basis. So you can see that depending on what your mindset was as an individual user, you might be somebody that likes 3-month, but you don't like 6-month, or perhaps it's the opposite. Maybe you like 6 months, but you don't like 3 months. So the point that I'm trying to make is, if you wanted to, you can see the rankings for each one of those 10 different rankings in there and utilize it accordingly. Remember, when we're in classes, we're doing something at a broad level, and we're not here telling you this is the one and only one way that you can go about this process. We're showing you a way, and if you don't like that way, then feel free to trade your particular strategy however you best see fit, but maybe you'll still be able to get some utilization out of this tool, even if you do not agree with me in the class in the end on how we're using it in the class. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that that is how those total numbers are being ranked. They're basically an equal ranked system off of these 10 different rankings for each sector: 52-week high percentage, 3 green arrows percentage, market forecast percentage, the 1040 crossover, 3-month price, 6-month price, shake and money flow, CCI, ROC, which is rate of change, and then RSI. And if you ever wanted to learn more about those various rankings, you can probably do some Google searches as well. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that the final line here that shows the rankings is basically a way to look at all of its individual rankings and then average them out and then compare them to all the other sectors out there. Another thing that I would point out is that when we're in class and we're looking for bullish candidates, we are looking for those that are listed in the green, which are the top 3 for that particular week. Remember, those will change as the weeks go on, but we're looking for the top 3. When we're looking at stocks to potentially short, if we get to that point where we want to be shorting more stocks, then we're going to be looking at the bottom 3 and looking for opportunities there as well. So one thing I do want to point out is that this is a relative ranking system, and what I mean by that is every single week there will always be 3 in the green and 3 in the red and all the rest in the middle yellow. So remember, there could be a time where the entire stock market is in a bear market and all stocks and all sectors are down in price. There will still be 3 in the green. On the other hand, we could be in a rip-roaring bull market where everything is up, all stocks and all sectors have positive performance, and there will still be 3 in the red. So the point is, it's a relative ranking system comparing one sector to the others on a relative basis. It's not an absolute ranking system. So anyway, let's go back here now that you know how those are being ranked with those 10 different elements. And then when we look at this top area of the sector selector, that's how these different rankings are occurring. This particular graphic here, of course, is viewing the final total rank of what I just showed you a moment ago and kind of giving you a visual way to understand the movements. So often when we're looking at the various setups out there, there's only the data for that particular week. So remember that this graphic is somewhat interesting because you can see not just this week's information, but the prior weeks leading up to it. And that can tell a story. You know, when you're looking at something like technology as an example, technology had been a leader, as you can see in the orange here. You can kind of follow your eyes back. But technology had been #1 for several weeks in a row. But then we started seeing a little bit of a slippage here taking place here at the end of June and kind of going into July. So that tells a slightly different story than something like the utilities, which is here in the blue, where utilities had been in a rough patch earlier, and now they're starting to catch favor a little bit more. Now, of course, utilities and real estate are very interest rate sensitive, so you will find that their rankings will typically improve if interest rates fall, and they'll usually deteriorate if interest rates are rising. So you have to be aware of the different nuances of the various sectors out there as well. But on the whole, it does a pretty good job of giving you a visual understanding of what's taking place and some of the trends that are taking place out there. Now, it should be obvious that the top 3 scores here are showing you kind of a thicker colored line and peg, and that again is specifically because I built this for the Monday class, knowing that in our Monday top-down trend trading class we're looking for candidates that are in the top 3, and so I wanted my class to be able to easily see going forward the green, which usually signifies good, and then of course our company colors of blue and orange to stand out each and every week, so that way your eye can track those easier. Some of the other areas down below here are not going to stand out as much, but that was by design. I don't want them to stand out as much because it's not helpful for our class if they're not standing out as much, or if they were to be standing out as much. So anyway, just wanted to clear that up again, going back to the aspect that this tool was created specifically for a purpose, and that purpose was for my top-down trend trading class. All right, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Again, the other thing that I would mention is there is a date that is kind of above these pegs as well, so that way you can see what were the rankings back here on a 3-month rolling time period. You might want to go back a couple of months to see, okay, well, where was discretionary during this particular week, or what have you. And since discretionary over here is kind of that turquoise color in this case, then we can see over here a couple of months ago, you know, discretionary was a bit higher. So anyway, make sure you're recognizing the dates in this particular case as well. All right, let's now take a peek at our bottom half of our other graphic, or of the graphic. And so, as I mentioned before, this is going to contain a lot of detail. So you're going to want to click on that in order to see it in much greater detail. You can see now it's taking up my full screen on my monitor where I can read those tickers and some of the different icons and different things like that. So I kind of mentioned the top part of it before, so I won't go over that again and belabor that point. These obviously are structured in a way that are ranked by the sector for that particular week. And what will be very helpful for those of you that are not as familiar with this graphic is getting used to this legend that you see kind of off to the right hand side here. This will show the various icons and will allow you to kind of understand what those icons represent. So first things first, let me show you that on the healthcare area here, you're seeing all these different ticker symbols that are kind of in the green that's directly below it. And those symbols represent stocks that are hitting 52-week highs. If you forget what that might happen to represent, remember that this kind of note right here should remind you. 52-week highs are pointing up, so all these ticker symbols above, kind of this middle graph, are going to be the 52-week highs, and then of course the label down here that says 52-week lows in red and the arrow pointing down. The tickers below this middle graph are going to be all the stocks hitting 52-week lows, so it can kind of give us a sense of the different stocks that are making price extremes out there. So Let's start with the icons on the 52-week highs. So notice, first of all, under healthcare, there's a whole bunch of ticker symbols here. There's two different columns. That doesn't mean anything. It just is basically a way for me to kind of expand information horizontally as opposed to vertically, where I knew I would run out of room. And so notice that these are generally listed in alphabetical order here in ticker symbol, and then it kind of rolls over, in this case from IDXX, rolling up here to ILMN, and goes all the way down to WST. So those are all in alphabetical order, it's just that you'll find them in two different columns for each sector that you have above it. Now notice that to the right of the sectors, you're going to find various icons. And the icons are going to be listed in this legend over here. So notice that the very first icons you're going to see to the right of the ticker symbols are going to be either a green check mark, a green dot, or an X. Because there's only three conditions that can exist, which is either the stock has three green arrows, or it does not. So if it does not, it has that X next to it. And if it does have three green arrows, then these icons are meant to be a way for you to distinguish between so-called fresh and so-called stale. If an icon is stale, it's going to have that dot kind of with almost a black box around it. And if the signal is fresh, it's going to have that check mark. Now, if a signal is fresh, what needs to occur is that not only does the stock have three green arrows, but it has not gone up more than 5% since giving us that signal, and it has not gone more than 5 weeks since giving us that signal. Now, remember that our class specifically uses weekly candles, not daily candles, so all of our data is derived from that understanding as well. So anyway, in this particular week, you see a check mark, a green check mark next to Abbott Labs, ABT. So that means that as of this week, that would be considered a fresh candidate, meaning that it has not gone up more than 5% without us, and it has given us the three green arrow signal within the last 5 weeks. Notice that directly below it, we have ALGN, and that's got a green dot next to it, not a check mark. So in that particular case, it's telling us that yes, we have three green arrows, but it's not a fresh set of three green arrows. It's a stale set of three green arrows, meaning that either the stock has gone up more than 5% since giving us the three green arrow signal, and or it has given us the signal further back than 5 weeks. So anyway, that's a way to distinguish it. And then there is an example right there next to BAX, Baxter, that is a X. So that tells us that that stock, while impressive that it hit a 52-week high, which is why it's on this list, it does not actually have the buy signal that we're looking for in class with the three green arrows, which of course addresses the 30-week moving average, the MACD, and the stochastics. If you want to learn more about that, of course, attend my class. So that's the first set of icons there. The next set of icons are going to be flags, and notice that it's going to be either a green flag, a yellow flag, or a red flag. And that's going to talk about strong industry, neutral industry, or weak industry. And what I'm using on the weeklies is just a very simple approach, looking at the last 3 months price performance of the industries. Remember, industries are a level below sectors. There's a lot more industries out there, approximately 70 industries, whereas there's only 11 sectors that are out there. So we do go into a lot more detail in the ranking of the sectors themselves, as opposed to the industries as just a straight 3-month price performance that we're looking at there. But it's a quick way for those of you that want to do additional top-down analysis to quickly identify areas of strength, weakness, or neutrality. And so as an example up here with ABT on Abbott Labs, notice that that has a green flag next to it, which is telling us that we have a strong industry in addition to the strong sector that it belongs to. Whereas if you look at, let's say, AZN, AstraZeneca here, notice it has a yellow flag, so its industry group is actually considered neutral this week, even though it belongs to a strong sector. And I don't know if we have any examples of red flags here. We do not. But if we come on over here and we look at MSI, notice that it has a red flag in this case. So although it belongs to a strong technology sector, it is only in a negative, or it is in a negative industry group itself from a price performance perspective. So that might hinder us from getting too excited about that particular one. Now, we actually own that one currently as it stands right here at the end of July of 2018. That's another thing that I should point out. If you see underlying ticker symbols like MSI, like Microsoft, like MasterCard, those are all underlined there. That means we own them. We already own them in class. And the reason I identify that with an underline is just to draw your eye to it as a reminder that we likely will not be looking at those candidates in future classes because we don't need to. We already own them, so we don't need to analyze them again, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It just means that we already own them. You may not, and so they might be attractive and looking interesting to you, and that's fine. Now, I don't identify that underline in the legend itself for the simple reason that I don't want somebody that's not a premium market scholar like you are to be able to kind of reconstruct a portfolio and copy what we're doing in class in a premium atmosphere. And remember, once per month or so, I might show the public this particular graphic. And if they understood that the underlines meant that those were stocks that we owned, then they might try to kind of emulate our experience without actually signing up for our services. So that's why I don't identify that specifically in the legend. But just for your understanding of it, if you do see the underlines, that's what that represents, that we already own them officially in our class portfolio. All right, let's now talk about our next set of icons here. So notice off on the legend here it says GIV. So I kind of call that my GIVE acronym, and it just stands for Growth Income Value. And what I'm looking for in that particular case are stocks that are showing characteristics that could identify them as either growth, income, or value candidates. Now, in my Monday class specifically, I'd say that the one that matches up the closest to what we're hoping to accomplish is actually the growth, the growth characteristics, or the pink G icons in this particular case. Remember, I do teach a dividend growth investing class where the income characteristics and even maybe the value characteristics could be a little bit more valuable. I put them on this graphic, again, just trying to enhance it further for those of you that might not attend my top-down trend trading class but still want to get some benefit out of it. So while we won't necessarily focus on the I's and the V's so closely in this Monday class, the G's can be helpful for that. And what I'm looking for in terms of the G score and what would define a value, or I'm sorry, a growth characteristic for a company is a stock that has 15% earnings per share growth on an average basis over the last 5 years, 15% sales growth, again, averaged over the last 5 years, and then a 15% return on equity and a 15% return on investment. So think of the 15s. There's 4 different 15s I'm dealing with there with the that growth icon. But if you do have a company that offers those 4 different characteristics that particular week, then it will have a pink G next to it. So as an example, over here we can see that Biogen IDEC, ticker symbol BIIB, has that pink G next to it, identifying that that is a stock. It's not a recommendation, but it is a stock that is exhibiting growth-like characteristics. Let's talk about the next one, which is income characteristics. And what I'm looking for there is a stock that has raised its dividends for at least 10 years in a row or more, and also currently has a 3% yield, or at least thereabouts. And so in this case, let's use AT&T as an example down below here. So this is in the lows area. Notice it's kind of shaded in a little bit of a pink there to remind our mind that it is a low and not a high, like the green would be up here, the pink would be down here. So we have AT&T, ticker symbol T, that does have that blue eye next to it on this particular week because it is a company that's raised its dividend for more than 10 years in a row and does currently have a yield over 3%. So again, that is not necessarily a focus in my top-down trend trading class, but might be useful for those of you in other classes. And then lastly, the value characteristics here. That would be the V, that would be in an orange color. So as an example, let's use Ford You can see down below here in the lows again under the discretionary this week, there's ticker symbol F, that is Ford, and that has a V next to it, and that means that it has value-like characteristics. Again, it's not a recommendation, it's just simply a factual evidence that it does exhibit some characteristics that value investors are sometimes interested in. Now remember, you don't just go and buy stocks that are value stocks. In most cases, you have a lot of other reasons that go into it, so I want to be clear on that, because sometimes you buy stocks that have cheap valuations and you learn the hard way that the stock price continues to go lower. But anyway, what I'm looking for with a value characteristics are stocks that have PE ratios currently that are less than 15, that have PEG ratios that are less than 2, that have price to sales ratios that are less than 2, that have price to book ratios that are less than 2, and that have a market cap of at least $2 billion. So that is your breakdown of the sector selector, both the top and the bottom portions. And one last thing I'll point out, it should be self-explanatory, but in the middle here, you'll also see that we have total 52-week highs versus total 52-week lows. And what it's doing is it's going back over the last 3 months or 13 weeks and showing you the trends of the total amount of stocks within the Market Scholars 1000 watch list that I mentioned before that are giving you 52-week highs versus the ones that are giving you 52-week lows. So as you can see, this also has a date below it, so that way you can remind yourself what date it is that you're looking at that particular point, and it goes back in time. But you can see here in this case it says July 27th, which is when I produced this on Friday night. It showed that over the previous week, 144 stocks of the 1,000 stocks in the Market Scholars 1,000 hit a 52-week high, as opposed to only 30 of those 1,000 stocks that were giving you a 52-week low, which is listed down here in red. So again, a new enhancement for this particular tool for you to be able to see visually, are the trends of new 52-week highs increasing, or are the lows increasing, or vice versa. It gives you one more point of analysis there. All right, so that pretty much wraps us up. Really appreciate your guys' enthusiasm around this particular product. Of course, I appreciate your retweets and your likes and different things like that as well. Remember, if you have additional questions beyond this, you can join me in my question and answer class. So let me pull up our schedule right here as we sign off and remind you that currently I teach my question and answer class on Thursdays at noon Eastern time. And so feel free to join me during that class if there are additional things you wanted to ask me about regarding that particular sector selector tool. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you got more out of this. And again, this can be kind of a more permanent video that I can share with folks during my class, and that way it'll help me save time during class if I can direct them to this video where I give you a little bit more in-depth information about the sector selector tool. So with that, all the best of success with your trades and your investments. Goodbye for now.